With some redrafting, a stronger cast and crew, or a more generous VFX spend, these landmark TV moments could have made the soul-stirring impact that the creators clearly intended. Instead, they just stick out as some of the worst moments of their respective shows, as monuments to awesome potential that was totally wasted. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 epic TV moments ruined by awful execution. Number 10. Jaxs Death, Sons of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy committed the most cardinal sin of bungling its very final scene, a moment which must have read as emotionally shattering on paper. The suicidal demise of protagonist Jaxs Teller, who ends a police pursuit by riding his motorcycle into the path of an incoming semi-truck. Seeing Jaxs repeat his own father's demise riding the same bike on the same highway, no less, should have been a poignant and poetic end to the series, were it not for the fact that the scene's CGI budget amounted to a crusty $10 bill. As neat as the visual of Jaxs riding with a fleet of cops behind him was, the cut to a dodgy digital cardboard cutout of Jaxs as he approaches the truck is hilariously bad, to say nothing of the terrible CGI crows then seen snacking on a piece of CGI cake as a CGI pool of blood creeps near. And just like that, what should have been one of the show's most impactful scenes was rendered a cringeworthy computer-generated laughingstock. Awful stuff. Number 9. Clark vs. Doomsday, Smallville. Even in its better years, Smallville was always a show conceived on a budget, and so fans were largely used to cheap-looking visual effects and corny costumes. And in a way, it was part of the show's charm, really. But audience goodwill was stretched beyond breaking point in the Season 8 finale, Doomsday, when Clark finally faced off against his mighty comic book foe, Doomsday. I mean, it's right there in the title. For starters, Doomsday effectively resembled a goofy 90s Power Rangers villain rather than Superman's most terrifying nemesis. I mean, not as bad as the Ninja Turtle Doomsday, but still close. Worse still, the hilariously cheap, terribly edited fight scene lasts all of around a minute before Clark body slams the baddie into the ground beneath Metropolis. Even accepting the show's limitations, this was painfully lazy. Smallville had pulled off far more impressive set pieces in its earlier seasons, suggesting that the show had even become bored of itself at this point. Number 8. Tony and Liv's final confrontation, The Sopranos. One of the most compelling aspects of The Sopranos' first 2 seasons was Tony Soprano's relationship with his narcissistic, manipulative mother, Livia. Creator David Chase originally planned to heighten the tension in Season 3 by having Liv called to testify against her son for his crimes. Yet actress Nancy Marchand sadly passed away before these scenes could be filmed. But rather than simply have Liv die off-screen, Chase decided to use visual effects to create a final confrontation between Tony and Liv, largely pieced together from existing clips of Marchand pasted on top of a stand-in actress. The results are honestly, well, terrible, delivering not only the worst and most embarrassing scene in the entirety of The Sopranos, but also being visually hideous enough to feel relatively disrespectful to the late Marchand. Between the effects, which were pretty unconvincing at the time, and the obviousness of Marchand's dialogue being recycled, it's a total disaster of a final showdown between mother and son. It would have been far more sensible to simply have Liv die out of nowhere, rather than try to contrive one last meaningful interaction. Because the end result was just a pure mess, folks. Right, quick question. What TV moment do you wish you'd never seen with your own eyes? Let me know in the comments, folks. Number 7. Rick finds out Laurie's dead, The Walking Dead. It's not just cheaping out on VFX which can ruin a scene, you know, but an actor who chews up the scenery like their life depends on it, and a director who seemingly doesn't call them out on it. Early in Season 3 of The Walking Dead, Rick learns that Laurie has died while delivering her baby, and he's quite understandably, well, traumatized. Unfortunately, Andrew Lincoln's performance in this scene is straight out of the Sean Penn overacting playbook, full of big acting and self-conscious acting tics, which thoroughly draw attention to themselves. The stagey whimpering and his eventual collapse to the floor feel disingenuous to the painful moment that we're being presented with. Now, Rick should absolutely be anguished, but this was hammy enough to render an otherwise heart-wrenching scene comically overwrought, and ultimately even meme-worthy. And that's not what you want, really, is it? Number 6, Charlie returns. 2.5 Men. Charlie Sheen was infamously fired from hit sitcom 2.5 Men at the end of its 8th season, after which Ashton Kutcher was brought aboard to play the replacement character of Walden Schmidt. The show eventually wrapped up with its 12th season in 2015, with fans speculating that creator Chuck Lorre might have mended bridges with his difficult star, enough to even bring him back for a fond farewell. This is totally ignoring the fact, of course, that Sheen's protagonist, Charlie, was given an off-screen death at the start of Season 9. Now, Charlie did technically appear in the series finale after it's revealed that he is in fact alive, though Sheen was nowhere to be seen. That rhymes. With his part instead played by a stand-in from behind. Charlie ends up being crushed to death by a falling piano in the show's final moments, after which Lorre makes a smug cameo, quipping "winning," and is then himself crushed by another piano. For a show that had little interest in the meta up to this point, it felt like an odd note on which to end things, and an excuse for Lorre to simply aggrandize himself while further flinging mud at Sheen. It would have been far more satisfying to either just leave Charlie out of the episode entirely, or find a more heartfelt and cathartic way for Sheen to appear one more time. Lorre did actually offer Sheen the cameo himself, but he turned it down, instead offering up a more affecting reunion scene, which Lorre reportedly vetoed in favor of this quasi-masturbatory alternate. Hey you, if you are finding this list right here about awesome TV moments that were ruined by awful execution interesting, then hit that subscribe button below and you'll get even more What Culture videos in your life every single day. Number 5, Bob kills Josie. Twin Peaks. David Lynch's Twin Peaks is full of wonderfully weird and messed up moments, but one that remains off-putting for all the wrong reasons some 30 years later is the unintentionally comical demise of Josie Packard. Once it's revealed that Josie was behind the shooting of Agent Cooper, she attempts to shoot herself, only to suddenly drop dead out of nowhere. As Truman cradles her corpse, Lynch cuts to the knob of a nearby drawer, where Josie's soul has seemingly been imprisoned by the villainous Bob. After a few terrified moments, Josie is contorted into a CGI wooden face on the knob, and never seen or heard from again. Though it's certainly a disturbing idea, the outrageously awful VFX, even for the time, just makes this feel like an amateur project. Granted, Lynch loved to use unconventional, some might say cheap effects to disarming effect throughout Twin Peaks, but never has it quite undermined the tone of a sequence as much as it does here. Seeing Josie overlaid awkwardly over the knob and then turned into a horrendous digital render is definitely more laughable than creepy. Number 4, the Carver Reveal, Nip Tuck. Nip Tuck's second season was a marvel of self-aware trash, most memorably defined by the introduction of the Carver, a masked abuser with a penchant for disfiguring his victims. Season 2 did a fantastic job of building up how much of a threat the Carver posed to both Sean and Christian, with the storyline ultimately defining the entirety of the third season. Fans were chomping at the bit to find out the villain's identity, trading outlandish theories which were just plausible enough to suggest that basically any main cast member could be the Carver. And so, when the long-awaited reveal finally came, fans were massively disappointed to learn that it was none other than Sean and Christian's rival plastic surgeon, Quentin Costa, played by Bruno Campos. Besides being the most obvious culprit, despite the show's half-baked attempts to throw fans off the scent, fans have been able to decode the Carver's masked voice a while earlier, and figure out that Bruno Campos was at least voicing the character, if not also playing him. And to make matters worse, FX accidentally posted images online of Quentin as the Carver just a day before the reveal episode aired, entirely taking the wind out of its sails. Well done, FX. Given how riveted fans were by the entire Carver plot, the reveal amounted to a massively underwhelming twist, and way too much energy spent on trying to throw viewers off the scent. In a show propelled by its absurdity, almost any other character would have been a more interesting pick here. Number 3, Hhabib Marwan's Death 24. Hhabib Marwan was one of 24's all-time best villains, the impossibly devious terrorist who antagonized Jack Bauer throughout the show's 4th season, with his seemingly endless array of evil plots. Fans were itching to see the manner in which Jack would brutally dispose of him, and so were left massively underwhelmed when he ultimately killed himself by cutting Jack's hand, as Jack desperately tried to stop him from jumping off a parking structure. Now, Marwan falling to his death is absolutely fine, and it even gives Marwan the last laugh over Jack in a way, but the bargain basement green screen CGI employed for the sequence looked awful back in 2005, and obviously looks no better today, 20 years later. Man, we're getting old. It's just so hilariously obvious that actor Arnold Vosloo is falling onto a crash mat in a warehouse somewhere rather than on set with Kiefer Sutherland, and even the basic physics of Marwan's falling movement doesn't really make sense. What should have been a brutal and dramatic moment in the season 4 finale instead invited nothing but guffaws and groans. Number 2, the fall of Daenerys Targaryen, Game of Thrones. Look, Game of Thrones' entire 8th season could in fact be called an epic milestone moment of TV derailed by its poor execution. But there is one specific aspect of the season which fans especially hated: the hurried, unbelievable downfall of Daenerys Targaryen. Yep, let's talk about it again. While there's absolutely nothing wrong with the basic idea of Daenerys becoming the Mad Queen, murdering thousands of innocents by destroying King's Landing, and then being killed by Jon Snow, Dany's descent into madness was so thoroughly rushed that it rendered her entire arc inert. After years of meticulous character development, Dany's descent needed to be handled slowly and carefully. But in Season 8, it happened almost on the turn of a dime, and felt totally inauthentic to the character as a result. Had it been given a bit more time to breathe, it could have been a powerfully tragic tale of downfall. But instead, it came off as hokey and dramatically unearned. Number 1, Osama bin Laden's death, the newsroom. And yet nothing on this list proves quite as embarrassing as this infamous scene from Aaron Sorkin's political drama series, The Newsroom. Yep, get ready. Near the end of the show's 1st season, Sorkin wrote an episode dealing with the 2011 assassination of Osama bin Laden. And given Sorkin's penchant for fearless, incisive storytelling, it should have been a probing expose of how newsrooms the world over dealt with such shocking news. Instead, it boiled down to a toe-curlingly awful scene on a plane, where executive producer Don Kiefer tries to calm down a cabin full of increasingly exasperated passengers, aware that President Obama is imminently due to make a huge announcement. After a mild fracas, Kiefer is confronted by the plane's captain, at which point Kiefer informs him that the American armed forces killed bin Laden for him. Cue the unbearably corny music swelling as the cabin crew celebrates the terrorist's demise, and Kiefer then smugly quips, "We reported the news." What could have been an interesting historical document and potentially even a cathartic moment for audiences was instead turned into a stunningly tone-deaf, cheesy, jingoistic misfire. That this wasn't satire on the part of Sorkin is just stunning, really. Now continue the YouTube journey that you're currently on by tapping on another What Culture video right here. Have a good time. I'll see you soon.